The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the shooting death of Kentucky Judge Kevin Mullins. This attack was caught on camera, and the man holding the gun was the man who was supposed to protect the judge inside that courthouse, Sheriff Mickey Stines. Here's the story. Whitesburg, Kentucky is a small rural community of under 2,000 residents in eastern Kentucky. A beautiful place to live. It's the kind of place where everyone knows each other and where many folks have both personal and professional connections. And that was the situation with the local sheriff, Mickey Stines, and the only judge in town, Kevin Mullins, both with great reputations, known especially for their work in trying to help their community battle the opioid epidemic, which was taking so many lives and destroying so many local families. On September 19th, the judge and the sheriff grabbed lunch together, and later that afternoon, the sheriff went to the judge's chambers for a closed-door private meeting. What happened next, no one in this small town expected. The sheriff looked at the judge's phone, stood up, and fired his gun several times, taking the life of Judge Mullins. All of it caught on camera. The sheriff then walked into the courtroom, laid down his gun, and surrendered himself. Sheriff Mickey Stines is now charged with first-degree murder as the shocked community tries to understand why. Such an unexpected circumstance by the folks there locally, right? Number one. And number two, if you just talk about the relationship between judges and sheriffs and the lives, the professional lives that they lead and the people of the community they serve, you don't expect any of this to happen. But it did. And it was all caught on camera. I want to walk you through that video in case you haven't seen it, so you understand that it's clear cut what is going on inside of this, inside the judge's chambers. Now, there's no audio. There's only video of this. There's no audio of it. So you don't know anything about the conversation, but if you look at the body language and the back and forth, you get a clear taste for what happened inside that room. Let's take a look. And right here you can see the judge he probably can't believe this is actually happening at this moment and is desperately trying to hide, to protect himself. And the sheriff pursues him. And each time the video pauses, that's when the gun is fired. And he's about to leave, but he sees the sheriff is still moving. To ensure that he takes out the sheriff, he fires one more time. This is what's called direct evidence in a case, by the way, folks. This is direct evidence. This is evidence of the crime itself. It's better than an eyewitness. It's a video. There is some room for interpretation because there is no audio. But with this in existence, this video existing, and being obviously the biggest piece of evidence against the sheriff, it really has everyone wondering about what is this trial going to be about? And that brings us to our first question in our investigation tonight. It's about the sheriff. What is the defense going to be? Seems like it's got to be connected to why he did it, because it's not a whodunit. It's a why did he do it? It's not self-defense, because in that moment we can see with our own eyes the judge poses no threat whatsoever. He's trying to save his life. So let's get to the bottom of this. Joining me, the attorney representing the woman suing former Sheriff Shawn Stines, Ned Pillersdorf, is with us. And to get insight into what might be going on in the sheriff's mind, forensic psychiatrist Dr. Daniel Bober. Great to have you both here. Before we answer this question, I want to hear and play for you something from the sheriff's defense attorney, Jeremy Bartley is his name. Take a listen to what he had to say about this case, the defense, and in particular, Ned, the lawsuit that your firm has brought.
Do you know whether this is connected to the federal lawsuit he was a part of? Is there any connection between these?
I think that the timing of what occurred is certainly something that is going to be a crucial point in this case. The timing of the deposition, amongst other things and other background information that will complete that story. But I do, yes, to answer your question, I do believe that that is a piece. This is a large story that's a story that in some ways is difficult to tell. We look forward to sharing a more complete version of that as we go through this judicial process.
Wow, that's the closest we've gotten to a direct answer to this question. Ned Pillersdorf, he mentioned specifically the timing, the deposition. That deposition was at your law firm, right?
It was.
So from your perspective, what's happening in that moment? How is he acting? And what do you think he could be referring to, which is this larger story?
Yeah, to put this in perspective, we had filed the lawsuit on behalf of two women who Judge Mullins' bailiff sexually extorted. And the way that happened was, if you're on an ankle bracelet or in a drug court in Kentucky, you're very vulnerable to sexual exploitation. And what we alleged was that the bailiff basically said, you don't have to pay your $250 this month if you'll go into chambers with me and perform some sexual acts. And we sued Sheriff Stines on the theory that he knew or should have known that this sexual exploitation of these vulnerable women was going on. On the Monday, we took Sheriff Stines' deposition. He was acting odd, tense, whatever word you want to use. And the best way I've tried to explain it to people, if you watch that bizarre initial appearance by Sheriff Stines, where he was asked direct questions by the judge, a couple times he didn't respond at all, or he just almost seemed to be in a daze. I thought there was something going on. The deposition was Monday. On Thursday, when I heard the shocking, unbelievable news that Stines had shot the judge, my first thought was, is this related to the lawsuit? As you said, Vinnie, this is not a who did it. This is why did he do it? And after that comment today was made by the defense attorney, I think I've had the national media call me, have any idea what he's talking about? I'm not sure. A number of people have asked me, Ned, do you think it was related to your civil lawsuit? And I've had people come up and tell me it was absolutely related. I've had people tell me it was totally unrelated. And I've had people say it was semi-related. Now, of course, in situations like this where there isn't anybody on the streets of Whitesburg or Letcher County not talking about the case, a lot of people are talking who don't know what's going on. The people who do know what's going on aren't really talking. And I guess today his defense attorney apparently linked my lawsuit to the case. Now that can cut, a number of different ways. The lawsuit was almost a frontal assault on the Letcher County Courthouse. I early on told NBC News that they turned that courthouse, the sheriff's department, into a brothel. It wasn't just one woman they were exploiting, it was a number of women. And, maybe that statement maybe was over the top, but there's something going on there where women were being exploited. And, one of the reasons I have been talking to the media, the reality is if you walk into a Kentucky courtroom today, what you will see is something I didn't see when I started practicing law in Kentucky 43 years ago. You will see women charged with drug charges, probably half my criminal practice. And what has happened, the good news is we've had a wonderful expansion of drug courts and women in drug courts, ankle bracelet programs. But what's not really talked about, and what this case illustrates, how vulnerable these women are to sexual exploitation. That's why we named Sheriff Stines as a defendant.
As a defendant in all this.
Now,
so let me just go to Dr. Daniel Bober really quickly on this now. So this is murder, potentially. He's been charged with murder on video, Dr. Bober. So I'm wondering, would it have to be some level of some sort of mental breakdown? Feeling the pressure from this, and if it's something larger, other pressures perhaps in his life that would do something to the sheriff that would make him do this? Because, like, if he gets in trouble, you know, through this civil lawsuit, it's money, it's prestige, you might not get reelected. But when you commit and you shoot and kill someone on video, the results of that are much more drastic. I mean, your entire life is basically over. So what are your thoughts about this?
You know, Vinny, my sense is that there's something else going on here. I had heard unconfirmed reports that maybe the sheriff had been involved in some sort of relationship, or the judge, rather, had been involved in some sort of relationship with the sheriff's daughter. Again, that's unconfirmed. It may be partially related to the lawsuit. But what strikes me about this shooting is that it was so up close and personal. There was primal rage. It almost seemed like the deepest level of betrayal, which then boiled over into just explosive rage. And to me, that smells like some sort of inappropriate relationship. And again, I'm just speculating because there's a lot we don't know here. But if the judge was involved in some way with the sheriff's daughter, you know, a father and their child, there's such strong protective instincts, and any perceived threats or loss of control, jealousy, unhealthy feelings of possessiveness, a history of trauma, substance use, any sense of betrayal like that could push someone over the edge where they have such an extreme emotional reaction that they are unable to restrain themselves. And when you look at this situation, there was no attempt to conceal the crime. Obviously, it's on video. And there was no attempt to flee. He surrendered right after. He wanted this guy dead. He emptied the gun, and that's the way it was going to be. So to me, it feels like there was something that happened that caused him to completely boil over and lose control.
Yeah, I think betrayal is the best word. You know, all that we've heard about the daughter, everything seems to go against that from the family that we've heard, that there was not necessarily a relationship there. But again, we don't know why he was calling his daughter that day. Okay, we've got a lot more to get to here in this investigation. Coming up next, why does the defense want this case in Letcher County?
I believe we're standing right where this case should be heard.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
At some point, we'll have to address the elephant in the room concerning venue. And I believe we're standing right where this case should be heard. And that's my stance on it. And if you want to look for support for that, look at the murder case that involved the Sheriff Sam Catcher in Pulaski County. And at the time, that was probably one of the most high-profile cases that area had seen. It was a nationally known case, and that thing was tried right in Pulaski County. Because at some point, you can't find a corner of the Commonwealth that hasn't received some immediate exposure to this. So we believe we're standing right where this case should be, a few feet from where this case should be tried, right here amongst Mickey Stein's peers.
Fascinating moment from Sheriff Mickey Stein's attorney saying, because the hearing for the case is in Letcher County at the courthouse where all this took place, and he's saying that's where the case should be tried. Doesn't want to move out of there. Sheriff says, I want to stay right here in Letcher County to try this case, which brings me to our next question in this investigation, which is, why does the defense want this in Letcher County? You know, instinctually, we always see defense attorneys saying we got to go somewhere else. This is a sheriff accused of murdering a judge from that courthouse, but wants to be tried in that courthouse. Why? Still with us, Ned Pillersdorf, and joining me, jury consultant, human behavior expert, Susan Constantine. This is a small community, Susan. I want to ask you, is there what's your take? What does your gut tell you on why the defense wants to stay in that small community of Letcher County?
Well, my instinct is there is something that is going to be revealed to that jury that really affects this community, and it's personal. So we have the Commonwealth and we have, of course, the Sheriff's Department, and they've actually both have been very well respected. But there's something else that's going on, and I think this defense attorney wants a jury pool of their peers in their own community, because he's going to open up something and expose something that I think that's going to shock this jury.
Ned Pillersdorf, let me ask you about that. If it's connected to your lawsuit, if it's connected to what was happening in the judge's chambers, your lawsuit, you weren't suing the judge, were you? From your perspective, did the judge have any knowledge of what was taking place after hours in his chambers? Could that in any way be connected to what the defense wants to potentially expose here?
We don't know whether Judge Mullins was connected to the case or not. We know the sex occurred in his chambers, and we know it was the judge's bailiff. I think why the defense wants the case in Letcher County is, you know, that it's not a whodunit case. And the social media chatter, the rumors, it's out there. And, you know, as a criminal defense attorney, making a decision whether you want to change a venue is a big deal. I know we all think, well, jurors are all fair and impartial, they're sworn. That's not true. You want to be very careful where the case is being tried. What's interesting about all this is I've actually tried 4 high-profile murder cases in Letcher County, 2 death penalty cases. And the way the game is played is jurors are brought in individually. First of all, have you heard anything about the case? Tell me what you heard. And then they ask questions about the death penalty. But at that point, you can renew your motion for change of venue. And generally, I want it out of Letcher County, given the nature of my cases. But there's an interesting law in Kentucky that the Commonwealth can actually ask for a change of venue. And I'm predicting that is what's going to happen.
Wow.
And unfortunately, I know because unfortunately, I know you like the lawyers aren't here or like to talk about cases they've won. This is a case I lost. I represented a local official here in my home county of Floyd County, and they wanted to venue my public official to Pike County. And I argued, wait a minute, the Constitution says you have a right to be tried in the district where the crime occurred. And unfortunately, I lost that case. They venued my client to another county. And I predict, given the rumors, the gossip, the Commonwealth will move for a change of venue. Because, you know, when you bring jurors in and ask them, what have you heard about the case? Some jurors will be talkative and open and transparent, and others might have an agenda. You've got a sheriff who was popular. He was elected. I predict there's going to be a motion for change of venue from the Commonwealth. What generally happens, though, in change of venue cases, what judges generally say, in my experience, is, well, let's see if we can qualify a jury.
They make an attempt to at least do it. Let me just follow up with Susan on what you're talking about with those rumors. Rumors are everywhere, and most of these rumors, if not all of them, tend to place sympathy towards the sheriff, that he had to have a reason to do this, that something was going on. How does that impact potential jurors?
It does. And so, we say, and of course that in any case, we want them to focus on the evidence, right? The preponderance. He's already considered being not guilty before he's being proven guilty. But, however, they can't set that aside. And that's what I'm saying. Human beings have their own biases and their own belief system. And the fact that he walked right in there, he threw everything away. There was nothing that he risked. Everything when he walked in there. He didn't care. He did it right on camera and shot him. So with that being said, I agree. This was really personal. And I think this jury's going to say, for somebody to do what he did and to risk it all, there had to be something really extreme that was happening that really pushed him over the edge, and he lost emotional control and he shot the judge. Actually, his close friend.
Yeah, you're right. They have the personal and the professional relationship. Mm-hmm. And something else that we heard from his attorney is that they're going for an acquittal here. He believes there should be an acquittal of this case, which when, again, you look at the video, it's as clear as it can be. So getting to the why of it is so significant, and all those rumors still circulating in Letcher County. All right, Ned Pillersdorf, Susan Constantine, appreciate it. All right, a lot more to get to on Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues. I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the shooting death of Kentucky Judge Kevin Mullins. The man who did it, Sheriff Mickey Stines, will be fighting the charges even though he was caught on camera doing it, which means this entire case hinges on why he did it. Here's the story.
Appalachia is the part of eastern Kentucky where the towns are small and folks look out for each other. There's a lot of respect for law enforcement and the justice system, and folks who work in that system get to know each other very well. That was the case for the local sheriff, Mickey Stines, and his friend, District Judge Kevin Mullins. But like any place, sometimes there is controversy. In Letcher County, it was a deputy who got caught sexually assaulting female inmates in the judge's chambers after hours. That was a couple of years ago, but now everyone is taking another look at that case because something else happened in the judge's chambers. The judge was shot and killed by the local sheriff, Mickey Stines. The whole incident was caught on camera, and now many are wondering what's going on in this small Kentucky town.
Why? It always comes back to why when we talk about this story. But where is that why? And what else is happening here? Sheriff Mickey Stines inside the courtroom, and his family is there supporting him. There they are in that first row, right behind where the sheriff sits inside the courtroom, the same courtroom where he turned himself in, the same courthouse where this shooting happened. Now, if you take a look at the sheriff walking into that courtroom, there's an acknowledgement of his family. You can kind of see him whisper something to them. Sounded to me like "I love y'all" is what he said. So there's the family is with him. There's no break there. There is absolutely no ambiguity. It appears the family is literally there for him. He is acknowledging them as they come into the courtroom. Yet he's locked up away from his family for what he did. He's a sheriff. He knows you shoot a judge, you're going to get locked up, right? So it, again, gets back to the why of it and trying to uncover that. And that brings me to the next question in this investigation. Does the former sheriff's family have a connection to what happened here in some way, whether it's related to the motive or something else that's going on in their lives. Is it about the family? Joining me, the attorney representing the woman suing Shawn Stines, Ned Pillersdorf, is with us, and forensic psychiatrist Dr. Daniel Bober. Dr. Bober, we've talked about this, and I think you've used a great term to understand why someone might do this, which is, betrayal. And you look at the relationship. There's no stronger relationship for the sheriff than the relationship with his own family. What does it tell you that the family is there, supporting him every step of the way? He's acknowledging them, despite the fact that the act that he's committed, that we saw on video, has him locked up right now, away from his family.
Well, listen, Vinny, both these families' lives have been completely shattered. But again, this speaks to the motive. We don't know what the motive is. But, his family being there may be the fact that his family is close with him and they are generically supporting him. Or maybe at some level, although they don't condone what he did, maybe they understand what he did, and so they sympathize with it, and that's why they're standing behind him. Obviously, this is a very small town, and I'm only speculating, but I'm sure there's a connection between the sheriff's family and the judge's family, or they're probably not more than one person away from each other. But the fact that the family is there could just be, again, that they're there to support their loved one who they've always been close with, or it could be that they know a lot more than we do, which is likely, and they have his back.
I want to take a listen to Clayton Stamper, detective from the KSP, Kentucky State Police, testifying about the phone that was found at the scene of the shooting. Take a listen.
I was told that Sheriff Stines had tried to call his daughter, and he had tried to call his daughter from the judge's phone also.
So, have you obtained the phone records from Judge Mullins' phone?
I don't have those in my possession yet, no.
Okay. Have you issued a search warrant for them?
Yes.
Okay. And have officers confirmed that the sheriff's daughter's phone number was on Judge Mullins' phone?
Yes, I believe so, yes.
So that number had been called from Judge Mullins' phone?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And what's interesting, if you look at the phone as the shooting is taking place, the phone is then ringing, and that's the judge's phone, which is on the desk right there. You can see it light up that someone seemingly is calling right at the time that Sheriff Stines is shooting and killing Judge Mullins. Let me ask you, Ned, it seems the family's going to be connected. It seems the daughter likely is a witness here that will provide some facts for one side, both sides, if it's her number that's being called just before the shooting begins.
Just speculating, it sounds like there's a connection, but I do think the fact that who's sitting in the courtroom makes a big difference. It is not unusual in high-profile cases. We call it packing the courtroom. Sometimes our clients would bring in, prominent citizens to sit behind the defense table, or sometimes it's the other way around. I recently tried a case where my client killed a police dispatcher, and they basically had the whole police force sitting in the audience behind the prosecution table. You got to be naive to think that doesn't matter. Now, I think what would be particularly damning to Sheriff Stines if the family did not show up. Jurors, they're sworn to try the case from what they hear on the witness stand. In the real world, they're looking out in the audience and see who's sitting there, or sometimes who's not sitting there. It makes a difference.
Dr. Daniel Bober, I want you to take a listen to more testimony from Clayton Stamper, the detective. Here's talking about a statement that the sheriff allegedly made after being taken into custody.
I wasn't present, but when he When he was taken into custody, I was told by one of the other officers that were there that he made the comment, they're trying to kidnap my wife and kid.
Okay. Dr. Bober, if I heard that statement made by some stranger who burst into the judge's chambers and then is arrested and said, they're trying to kidnap my wife and kid, like I would very quickly have an opinion about that person. But in the context of this, like, I'm trying to figure out what this statement means.
Yeah, I mean, that's just right out of right field. I mean, is that some sort of paranoid delusion? Is there something going on, some larger conspiracy that we're unaware of that several parties are involved in? But yeah, that totally throws me off. That makes me take this in a very different direction. And so maybe there was some sort of underlying mental illness, psychotic break. Again, only speculation. The pressure got to the judge. We see people that have these brief psychotic reactions all the time when they get to be under tremendous stress and pressure. So a statement like that, to me, it's like, what doesn't fit here? That statement does not fit with anything we've heard so far. So that definitely adds to the list of possibilities in terms of a motive.
You know, Ned, I hear those words, and I don't know where the defense is going to go here, if they're going to have some sort of mental disease or defect defense, but that would be a great foundation, right? First of all, he's saying they're trying to kidnap my wife and daughter. He only shot and killed one person and didn't go pursue anyone else, right? After he did that, he put his gun down and surrendered himself. What do you think about that statement? They're trying to kidnap my wife and kid.
I think where they're going, there's been speculation. This is an extreme emotional disturbance defense, which in Kentucky gets you 10 to 20 years at 85%. That's, if I'm defending the sheriff, that's a non-starter. He can't do 85% at 10 to 20. The real defense that may be out there, and from basically what his lawyer said, is we call it a time to kill defense. And I know Judge Mullins isn't here to defend himself, but it's almost a jury nullification defense. It's where a defendant has information that he wants to put forward that suggests a person who killed, hate to say this, gets what he deserves. And that's maybe where they'll be going. I mean, John Grisham wrote that book, but that's a real defense in the real world. A common situation around here is somebody gets my daughter hooked on drugs, and the angry, enraged father goes and shoots the drug dealer. I've had that case, and it's sort of a jury nullification. In the real world, when you try a murder case in Kentucky, the jury is told we have what's called a subjective intent law. What was his intention? Here, there is no self-defense. It's strictly what was his intention. But the jury nullification comes in and says, not that concerned about the law. I just think whatever the deceased person did, he deserved it. And that defense is out there. I have no idea, truthfully, I have no idea why Stines did it. I was somewhat surprised today that the lawyer directly linked it to my civil case.
Yeah. Let's do this.
Surprised.
We've got more to talk about, Ned. You're going to stay with us. Big thanks to Dr. Daniel Bober. Still to come, big question all this. Will this be a death penalty case?
You are seeking the death penalty?
That has not been determined at this point in time. It was too early at this point in time to make such a determination.
The Court TV podcast will return.
You are seeking the death penalty?
That has not been determined at this point in time. It was too early at this point in time to make such a determination.
When do you think you'll make that determination?
After all the evidence has been collected, thoroughly gone through, and a conversation with the family has been had, and get their thoughts on the process.
There's the prosecutor talking about the death penalty for Sheriff Mickey Stines. He's got direct evidence of the crime. he's got to prove the case, but wow, think about that. You usually don't put those together, right? When someone in law enforcement gets in trouble, we've covered a lot of those cases. We're not usually talking about the death penalty. And that brings me to our next question in the investigation. Will this be a death penalty case? He shot a sitting judge in his chambers. Seems like it will qualify. Still with us, Ned Pillersdorf, and joining us, jury consultant and human behavior expert, Susan Constantine. Susan, I want to begin with you first. Death penalty, how much of a game changer is that when it's time to pick a jury and bring folks in who have to make that decision?
Well, those are all really strong authoritarian jurors, and those jurors have to be death qualified. And when you have a death qualified jury, they tend to be more apt to convict than acquit. So I think that the major thing is that the state wants to make sure that they have enough evidence. And just what he said, they're not sure yet. And I believe that what he's saying is true. They don't know yet. But if they do, I think it's not off the table. But that is a very hard leap. You know that, right? We've been through this before, Vinnie. But the fact that this is an officer of the court raises the bar higher. We've got a sheriff, and then we've got the judge. So I think that does rise to the level that it could possibly be a death penalty case. But if it's a death penalty case, it's authoritarian jurors, and that's just definitely not a good sign.
Ned Pillersdorf, let me ask you, you've tried death penalty cases in Kentucky. What are your thoughts about will this one be a death penalty case?
Technically, yes, but I don't think they're really going to seek it. First of all, Sheriff Stines does not fit the profile. Your typical death penalty case is somebody with a bad criminal record. And just at the end of the day, whether a prosecutor says, I'm going to seek a death penalty, that typically happens. It's a political question after some heinous crime where there's no question of overwhelming guilt. Here, there is real questions as to motive. And the reality is, and I know this probably better than anybody, my name is Ned Pillersdorf, but I'm also known as Mr. Janet Stumbo. My wife was the first woman elected to the Kentucky Supreme Court, and the commercials they ran during her reelection campaigns is, that terrible Judge Stumbo, she let this guy off death row and he killed this and he killed that. So it's a political decision. But the jury consultant's right. It does give you leverage in picking a jury. The way a death penalty case works is they'll individually question the jurors. And any juror who has some philosophical problems with the death penalty are automatically excluded. By definition, by math, that gets you a more conviction-oriented jury. Having said that, the death penalty is not that popular anymore. We had an interesting situation just a few weeks ago in Kentucky where an African-American lady running for the Supreme Court said to anyone who would listen, I'm against the death penalty. I sent her a donation. I admired her courage. Vinnie, she won with 80% of the vote. I think 30, 40 years ago, they would have taken that statement.
Right. Let me ask you this, though, Ned. In this particular case, do you think it could be used as sort of a bargaining chip? You seek the death penalty, and then you try to work out some sort of a deal.
I don't see a deal happening. Like I say, he's got to swing for the fences. He's got a real problem with the video. On the other hand, he may have a potent time to kill defense. He does not fit the profile of someone who should be facing the death penalty. I can't think of another law enforcement officer. We've had plenty of law enforcement officers who have committed crimes. I can't think of another one where they've actually gotten the death penalty, especially in this bizarre, unbelievable context we're here. Yes, the death penalty can be used as leverage for plea bargaining. It certainly helps you in picking the jury. It gives the prosecution an advantage. My bet is the death penalty will be off the table. And if I'm the prosecution in this case, I'd get it off the table, because sometimes the jury might think, that's just over the top. You're overcharging this guy.
A little too much.
And I did talk to the prosecutor, interestingly. He called me more as a witness. He said, Ned, you were present at the deposition. There may be a mental illness component to this. What was Stines' demeanor like? And what I told him was the same thing I've told you. His unusual demeanor. I just don't see, I think there's zero chance he'll be convicted and get the death penalty. I think the odds are they probably won't even seek the death penalty. They won't give the notice. But I could be wrong.
We don't know. We don't know how it's going to play out. Susan, you've seen me be very wrong, by the way. Let's talk about jury nullification, time to kill. Susan, what type of a juror, what type of a person do you see that could do that for this defendant?
As a death penalty juror? Well, those types of people, first of all, they're very strong-minded, right? They don't have any problem with making a very strong decision about rightness and wrongness. They don't have, it's not that they don't have empathy. They have compassion, but they don't get themselves emotionally invested. So they're able to set aside their own personal feelings and make a very logical decision. And those are the types of people, through voir dire and asking lots of different inquiring questions, to really understand how they think, what's important to them. There's just a myriad of different examples that we can use as far as examples to get information out of anyone at any time. But we're looking at trying to extract what's going on inside their thinking so that we can decide whether this person is a person we really want our jury, or whether we're going to use them as one of our preemptory strikes or challenge them for cause.
Big thank you tonight. Susan Constantine, always giving us great insight. Ned Pillersdorf, who likely will be a witness in all of this as well. Appreciate your time and your insight. Oh, you're going to be a witness. We'll see you right here on Court TV. Thank you both so much. Like I said, if anyone else off the street walked into the judge's chambers and executed him, there would be a loud public cry for the death penalty. But will that happen here? I'm not sure. I don't think so. First, the sheriff wants the folks in Letcher County to hear the case, which tells me whatever the motivation was, it's something he believes at least some members of the public will understand. The question is, will any of them end up on his jury? I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.
There you have it. If you want to see more in-depth reporting on the latest true crime stories, you can see me every weeknight, 8 p.m. Eastern on Closing Arguments. Thank you so much for downloading. And as always, please don't forget to hug the kids.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to CourtTV.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.